It has never been more clear as we have multiple shocking Leafs updates as it pertains once again to Mitch Marner and his future in Toronto, and things have taken a major turn. I'm going to break down exactly what those updates are and discuss what it means going forward as it changes the landscape once again of the Leafs offseason plans. We'll dive into that as well as a ton of other things, folks. Before we get into it, if you're part of the 71% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. You guys have been absolute beasts. 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys again for your continued support. And Darius, we've obviously talk about Mitch Marner, a ton of things going on, and we have some new reports that have dropped today and this morning that really paint the picture of how crazy the situation is now, but also is going to be once, of course, the free agency opens up here soon, but also as these teams continue to have conversations internally and, of course, with the players as well. Let's start with this one here, and it's never been more clear to, us, but also according to these reports, that Mitch Marner is going to be leaving Toronto. But some interesting things have happened and shifted here. So Chris Johnson came out and said Vegas is more likely to go after Sam Bennett than Mitch Marner in free agency. And Chris Johnson said that the Vegas hype of Marner to Vegas is actually overblown. We also have a couple updates from Elliot Friedman surrounding some teams that are in the mix now. But I want to get started with this. It seems as if the Vegas situation with Mitch Marner has taken a bit of a turn and was overblown by the media. But that also means now that if the Leafs want to get Sam Bennett, they're going to have to compete with Vegas.
Yeah, and Chris Johnson specifies here too that it's not necessarily just Sam Bennett, but they're looking for a Sam Bennett type, which is interesting because I think that's the Leafs game plan as well, and probably a lot of other teams because of the way the NHL is going. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think certain teams have certain needs. So I don't know. I think Vegas was always a sign and trade option. I don't know if they were going to sign him outright, right? So I don't know. At this point, we're going to get to some other teams. I think LA is definitely in the mix. We've heard of LA since last season that the Kings were going to be interested if he hit the market, if he was going to go to free agency. So obviously you can see here from David Pagnotta. I mean, like it could be the Kings that are going to offer him some big money here and could make room for him. And I think that's very interesting. The other thing I wanted to say too, because I've been seeing this the last couple of days, this whole thing of Marner versus everyone else on the Leafs, or maybe not everyone else, but Marner versus Matthews and Nylander, that whole argument that I'm seeing out there, because the majority of the fan base, I think, is behind Matthews and Nylander. There's a portion of the fan base that would actually like to see Matthews traded at this point, which I think is a bit ridiculous right now, at least. And then there's another portion of the fan base that is behind Mitch Marner. It's fractioned, right? And I think that's a lot of what we were seeing through the dressing room, why this team can't win. And I think that is a problem in and of itself. So I do think Mitch Marner probably wants to leave at this point by everything we've been covering the last couple days, weeks at this point. And I think that the Toronto Maple Leafs as an organization have to move off this player. So all these reports don't necessarily surprise me. I think at this point, it's really, is he just going to walk and sign a 7-year deal with a team like LA, or are him and the Toronto Maple Leafs going to come together and be like, listen, we'll get you the extra year if we can get an asset for you, help us in a sign and trade. But I don't know if that's likely at this point.
Yeah, and obviously you can see here, again, you mentioned it, David Pagnotta, the Kings are high on Marner's list of teams he's looking at, higher than the Golden Knights. The Kings will be aggressive in pursuit of him. So now there's another team that has entered the sweepstakes for Mitch Marner, and this is going to be a common theme over the next few days, next few weeks, about teams that are not only on the list for Mitch Marner, but we know there's a list of 7 or 8 teams reportedly that Marner is also interested in. And another one now, just 30 or so minutes ago from Elliot Friedman, is that the Utah Hockey Club are a team to watch regarding Mitch Marner. So it seems like every team under the sun, but realistically, he's such a good player. He's one of the highest, if not the highest coveted free agent in the past very long time, UFA that is, in the open market here. And we're not hearing anything surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs and re-signing Mitch Marner. Of course, we heard some rumblings once the season ended. It's the press conference from Brad Treliving. At least from what we're hearing now, maybe it's being quiet. Maybe that's a good thing that if they want to re-sign him, depending on what happens and whatnot. But we're not hearing any rumors from Elliot Friedman saying the Leafs are heavily involved in re-signing Mitch Marner. We heard some things yesterday about how they're still on the radar, but all we're hearing is other teams popping into the mix. Utah, the Kings, even Vegas. Although they're more likely to go after Sam Bennett, I could still see a world where a sign and trade would happen. There's a lot of smoke and fire there. There's also the Hurricanes we'll dive into in a minute here, but there's just a lot of teams now that are randomly, or maybe not randomly, because of course it's that time of year, surging into the market for Mitch Marner. And it makes a lot of sense. Some non-competitive teams, I think about the Ducks as well, and even Chicago, teams that have a ton of cap space, want a superstar to sell jerseys and things like that. Of course, the Blackhawks have Connor Bedard and stuff, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily random. I do think that Darren Ferris is behind quite a bit of this. Like, I think that, there is most of that. And obviously, everything that's happening with Sam Bennett and those reports, which we'll cover as well, is probably Darren Ferris, right? Mitch Marner's agent that and he shares an agent with Sam Bennett as well. So I think a lot of it could be that, but obviously a lot of teams are going to have interest in Mitch Marner, right? And Utah, Elliot Friedman went on to say that they want to make a big splash this summer, so they would like to go out and get a star player, and Mitch Marner is a star player, though I will caution other teams, like Carolina, we're going to get to in a second because their name finally popped up, and I was thinking like, why hasn't Carolina popped up? I thought that would be a destination for him at this point too. But, I don't know if he's going to be able to be the guy on those teams if you want to win and you want to succeed at least in the playoffs. So I think that's something to consider for those teams as well. But it's going to be interesting to see. A lot more teams are popping up now. Like LA was kind of always in the mix, but now they're more prominent where, Marner would want to go there. And I can kind of see that as well because it's a big market team still in LA, but there's like 1,200 other teams that play there as well. So I could see him finding that attractive where, you're not really at the forefront of things there, but still playing in a big market. So it's going to be interesting. Utah's in the mix. Carolina we'll get to in a second. Haven't heard too much on Florida in the last little while, which I think is interesting too with the Sam Bennett thing. So I think it's still very much up in the air and who's going to offer him the most money over 7 years.
Yeah, you look at the Carolina situation. This is a new report. It wouldn't be surprising if the Hurricanes are a team to watch out for Marner come July 1st. They've already tried to trade for him once, but he didn't waive at the time. If he hits free agency, though, it's a completely different situation. The Hurricanes are looking for more star power, and this, of course, according to Elliot Freeman, and some reports as well. We covered in yesterday's video. Freeman initially reported about Carolina, and now it's picked up since then. It didn't go as planned, but that hasn't changed their mindset, talking about when they went after Jake Gensel. They're expected to be aggressive again, and Marner fits the kind of impact they want. It's a fearless front office that won't hesitate to take another big swing. I think, among teams that are realistically likely to get Mitch Marner, I mean, the Hurricanes are right up there. I think the Penguins as well. We haven't mentioned them too much. I think they're very possible that Marner walks and goes there. But for the Hurricanes, I mean, we saw they got destroyed by the Panthers. They're missing a star player. And whether or not you guys and we believe that Mitch Marner could do that for a team, I don't think so, just from what we've seen here in Toronto. But maybe he goes to the Carolina Hurricanes and is that 1A option over there alongside some good young players that puts them over the top, although I don't necessarily believe that that would happen. There's also teams like Carolina, like I mentioned, but Chicago, Utah, like there's so many teams here that are getting linked to him because you can see here to go to financial levels that more traditional free agent markets won't. Talking about Carolina, who are aggressive notoriously, Chicago, Utah, teams who have a ton of open cap space. And Marner's camp is keeping an open mind. There aren't any automatic no's. So he's open to everybody. And the unfortunate reality is, if you want Marner back as a team and as a fan, it's going to be very difficult now with all these reports coming out because there's a ton of teams that are going to be willing to pay him more than the Leafs are because at $14 million or whatever he decides to get or ends up getting, they are going to handicap themselves too far, especially with all the holes they have and all the unrestricted and restricted free agents they have left.
Yeah, definitely. And for Carolina, if they end up signing Mitch Marner, like I'm not going to blame the player for not waiving his no movement clause at the trade deadline, but man, that would suck if he ends up going to Carolina anyway next year on a 7-year deal. That would really be awful to see that. But at the end of the day, I do think that Mitch Marner does, and again, this is just my opinion. I think that Mitch Marner wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. He wants to stay in Toronto and all that, and for everything to be great. But I just don't think that's the fact of the matter anymore. And because of his original contract negotiation, he's then turned into the bad guy in the eyes of some fans. Of course, there's a lot of fans out there, and I can appreciate it, that love Mitch Marner, want him to say and think that he's the best player on the team. I just don't think that's true, especially in the clutch. And for if he signs with another team, again, if it's Carolina, I think they get better, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to accomplish what they want to accomplish with him being the guy. So deep down, I do think that he probably wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, but it's similar to the New York Rangers situation last season where they all want to be New York Rangers, but under their own circuit, like everything going their way, right? They want to be there, but they want everything to go their way, and that's just not how sports go, right? So I just think that he probably wants to be the guy here, and I feel like things have just changed since 2019. So I think this is going to end in him not being a Toronto Maple Leaf, and where he goes is going to be interesting for the Leafs because again, if it's Carolina, you could end up seeing them in the playoffs. You never know. And obviously, with everything that happened at the trade deadline, that would be awful to see, of course. But don't blame the player for not, waiving his no movement clause. But it's going to be interesting. He is a star player in this league, and I just wonder if they can, sit down and work with the Leafs to get a sign-in trade going. That would be awesome for the Leafs. But I don't know if there's interest from his side.
Yep, we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news here. It's going to be interesting. Some fans turning on him, some fans defending him. And we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. You guys are the beast. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.